How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here, and you might not know, but ever since the Google Pixel dropped, I've been sort of wanting to get my hands on it officially on the day it gets to the UAE. But it turns out it takes a long time for these devices to get to the UAE, and this video idea sort of stemmed from that. But with the Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro leaks now out in full flesh, I thought I'd combine both of these videos into one to sort of appeal to Google and whoever's watching to ensure that the Google Pixel 6 series does make it to the UAE. The first time I saw a Google Pixel device was in 2016 or 2017 when Kevin the Tech Ninja actually visited Dubai and he showed me how the Pixel device worked, and ever since then I've had this intrigued feeling about the phone. And we all as a tech community in the UAE appreciate what the Google Pixel is doing, but ever since the launch of, let's say, the Pixel 4, things started to die down. The reason for this decline in interest, I think, stems from a couple of reasons. One, the fact that Google isn't really focusing on this market segment. So I've had people come up to me asking about the Google Pixel device for that year, and I've just had to say, well, don't get it because you might not get the support you usually get from other smartphone manufacturers, given that Google isn't officially present in this region. Or the fact that, should I get a Pixel device or should I get a Samsung flagship? And I always tend towards the Samsung flagship because they're sort of one step ahead of the game. And let me explain to you how that is. Or rather, not me, but Abbas from Tech Radar sums it up really well.
So I haven't been super excited about the Pixel series for the last couple of years, purely because I don't think Google's really innovated anything, and I think all the other manufacturers have gone so far ahead of the game now from Google. In fact, I didn't even buy last year's Pixel.
Now, I hope Google is listening and paying attention, because Abbas was one of the people I knew who was really excited about the Pixel device aside from me. In fact, we were in the UK a couple of years ago for a Huawei launch, but simultaneously the Google Pixel 2 or 3 launched as well, and we went to the Google store to check out the Pixel, knowing well that we wouldn't see it in the UAE for the next 3 months. But I think what Abbas goes on to say next is truly one of the biggest reasons why not many people, even globally, seemed to be interested in the Google Pixel lineup.
There were a couple of things that differentiated Pixel from other phones. One was the camera, and I think we've got fantastic cameras all over now. Google introduced computational photography back in the days, and it was phenomenal, but I don't think they've really caught up with it from hardware perspective. Samsung, Apple, Huawei, and their sensors are so good that it easily compensates for that. The second thing that Google was great at was a very lean, mean, clean software that allowed the phone to run incredibly fast. Again, with the advances in chipsets nowadays, I mean, with the Galaxy S21 or the OnePlus 9 Pro, they are so fast, especially with 120 Hz refresh rate on the screen. They're super zippy, super snappy. I actually like the UI of Samsung One UI 3.1. I think it's a nicer UI than stock Android. Even OnePlus does some good things to add to the boring stock configuration or Android skin. I don't particularly like that very much now. So I don't think the Pixel has anything that it can compete with, at least at its current level.
And I think I am going to stop Abbas right there, because this video was filmed perhaps 3 or 5 days ago before we saw this huge leak about the Google Pixel 6 series, which I want to get into in this video. So straight up, this is what the Google Pixel 6 and the Google Pixel 6 Pro, so not the Google Pixel 6 XL, but the Pro. I think they've finally caught on to the competition and they're switching from that XL naming scheme to the Pro. Once again, before I get into the core topics of this video, I do want to say all of this comes from Front Page Tech. I'll leave a link to their official video down in the description, and thank you to them for making this possible, I guess, making sure that people get to see the Google Pixel 6 perhaps 4-5 months in advance, or maybe they're gonna announce it in the next couple of days at Google I/O. But yes, this is what the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro looks like, and the first thing I want to say is that design reminds me of the Nexus 6P. I don't know why it does, maybe because of the banding that you see and that sort of dual tone-ish color finish. They've sort of showcased 3 different variants of the Google Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro. One has an orange top with a white sort of bottom. The other one is orange with an orangish bottom, and there was another one with sort of this goldish theme which looked extremely premium from the renders. Now, according to Front Page Tech, these renders have been made from real life images, but because they wanted to sort of keep the source of the pictures a secret, instead of just showing off the pictures, they decided to go the render route, which is absolutely fine. I think the few changes that we need to look at, first of all, the camera system. On the Google Pixel 6, you have a dual camera setup, whereas on the Google Pixel 6 Pro, you've got a triple camera setup. But none of these specifications are out in the flesh for us to really judge what sort of sensor Google is going for or how its computational photography is going to play with Google's image sensors. Now, one thing that this does remind me of is the fact that a couple of years ago at Google I/O, they sort of said they didn't want their smaller smartphones to have a sacrifice in the fact that the smaller smartphone and the bigger smartphone both have the same camera systems. Well, that's sort of gone out of the window because clearly the 6 has only 2 cameras, whereas the 6 Pro has 3 cameras. So that's something to keep in mind. The 3 cameras I would say are, the regular wide, then you've got the ultra wide, and maybe a periscope telephoto, whereas on the regular 6, you've got the wide and the regular ultra wide. So I think that's how the combination between the 2 smartphones is going to be. I don't know how much of a zoom range Google would provide, but going by how conservative Google's been in the past, I think about a 5x optical zoom range is what you can expect. Now, of course, these camera systems are housed in this sort of band style design, which I think looks phenomenal. And if you combine the design we've seen of the Google Pixel 6 with, let's say, the rumored Google Watch that's about to come out, the Pixel Watch, I believe, then it sort of goes in line with what Google is trying to do. And I think one of the core reasons why it's focusing so much on making sure its design looks phenomenal is because Google might be finally taking the step into its own silicon. Just like Apple did a couple of months ago with its M1 chipset, it looks like Google is planning to do the same. There was a report, I think sometime in early April from 9to5 Google, suggesting that the next Pixel series of smartphones is supposed to have the Google Silicon chipset. So it might not have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888, but instead would have the GS101, and the GS of course stands for Google Silicon. Now, to be honest, I haven't really faced any issues with the flagship processors we see of today. So the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 was very snappy. Yes, it might heat up a bit more, and maybe Google is focusing on that aspect of the processing power, or even the 865 from last year wasn't particularly slow by any means. And let's give Samsung some slack as well. The Exynos 2100 was not a bad processor after all. However, I do want to see Google sort of close knitting its software ecosystem with its hardware ecosystem. I think that's something that Google can definitely work on. So perhaps things like an AirDrop experience for the Android side of the world, especially with their Pixelbook series of, laptops. Maybe they could look at expanding into a MacBook competitor and then bringing Nearby Share into that experience. That sort of makes up the entire ecosystem, which has the potential to break the traditional Apple ecosystem. That being said, I don't want to delve much into that because we don't really know anything concrete about it, aside from the fact that the Google Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro is going to be running on Android 12, which I have seen some developer previews of. Actually, I made a video about it a couple of months ago, so if you want to check that out, check it out using the card above. One thing I do want to say that sort of ties on with the design aspect of the Pixel is the fingerprint scanner. So every single year since the Pixel 1, we've seen the fingerprint scanner on the Pixel being at the back of the device, but I think they finally adopted the in-screen fingerprint scanner, which is absolutely phenomenal to see. They've sort of gone in line with the trends, and I've actually had a poll on Twitter a couple of days ago asking people if they preferred a side, a rear, or an in-screen fingerprint scanner, and most of you all suggested that the in-screen is the best way to go, so long as the smartphone has an AMOLED panel, which I think will be the case. Speaking of the AMOLED panel, there's a leak of that as well, and to be honest, it looks pretty sleek. The fact that the bezels are so thin is a great step. Google is notorious for doing these weird bezels, so I'm glad that Google is focusing on, bringing the basics and bringing it right. There is a selfie camera on the front, so no notch, but it'll be interesting to see if Google sort of combines all of its features that came with the notch in a previous Google Pixel device. I don't even remember the actual use case for those features, so I guess maybe Google doesn't care either, but if they want to make it unique, they might look into that as well. But I guess that's pretty much everything we know about the Google Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro so far. The one thing that we don't know is battery capacity. If I was to guess, the Pixel 6 might come with a 4400 mAh battery, and the Pixel 6 Pro maybe with a 4900 mAh battery. I hope both of these support wireless charging, and I hope both of them come with a charger out of the box, and I hope Google doesn't go the Apple and the Samsung route of not providing a charger out of the box. But I think those things are still not yet set in stone. I am really excited about the design, the dual tone finish. Maybe it might be a bit too jagged or sharp for some people, but I personally prefer it, and I'm just excited to see it whenever it becomes official. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. This was Vaibhav. Do like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more content coming up very soon. I'll see you in the next one. Adios.